Okay. So here are the topics we're going to talk about today. Obviously, we'll start with the COVID-19 impact update, and we'll be talking from pretty much from a procurement perspective. Then we'll go through System of Award Management update, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020, and any small business impacts that came out in January. BetaSam, new system. Hopefully everybody's starting to play with that. That's where all of the procurement activities for the federal government are going to move to and be a one-stop shop. We'll talk a little bit about cybersecurity compliance and where we stand as far as schedule before implementation and audit. Talked about the Defense Logistics Agency export control. There's been some questions recently on that, and we'll walk through that. The All Small Business Act is one thing in there that we, particularly in California, be interested in. So the SBA is now starting to recognize the marijuana business, believe it or not. Then we'll talk about some hub zone changes. That's historically unutilized business geographic areas. And women-owned businesses, economic disadvantaged women-owned businesses, some changes there, positive changes, and some positive changes for veteran-owned businesses as well. And as James mentioned, feel free to do the chat. If there are questions we can answer today, we're certainly willing to do that. If not, we will take an action to go research that for you, and we'll send it to everybody. COVID-19. Hope everybody's safe out there. We're all pretty hunkered down, and it's good that I was already working out of my home, because this is it doesn't make much of a difference to me. So the government bottom line for procurement is still buying and open for business. Their focus is on essential items due to the emergency declaration by the President approximately a month ago. So there are procurements that are being accelerated by minimizing competition. So with essential items, a lot of essential items we've heard about on the news and everything are, the gowns and the masks and all the protected gear and ventilators, emergency medical equipment. So anything having to do with some of those essential items, they'll go out and they'll buy it very quickly. And so because of that, the competition does get minimized. So they're very quick turnaround going to those that they have sold, that have bought these items from before. Next, they increased the micro purchase and simplified acquisition thresholds so that they can quickly buy a lot of these items. Then they're in effect until July 1st at the moment. Then they'll drop down back to about $10,000 and $500,000. The importance here for small businesses, particularly in the micro purchase, $20,000 or less, typically what a government buyer will do with the federal government is use a credit card. Makes it very quick, very simple. There's no requirement to be registered in a system or anything else. You have something they need and they want to buy it, they can just pull out their procurement card, their credit card, and buy it from you. And I'd like to mention that, a lot of clients I've worked with, although their business is down and everything, do the market research. Take a look at what the federal government is buying, do that market research, and there's a webinar coming up on market research, and I would encourage you to watch that webinar. Give you some helpful hints on getting through. And the other thing is, feel free to sign up with your local PTAC, and we would certainly be willing to help you do that market research. And as I mentioned before, these thresholds are in effect until July 1st. They're using the COVID-19 code to track those acquisitions. So if you just put in COVID-19, you do your searches, they'll be able to track those specific acquisitions. Small business set-asides, whether you're women-owned, veteran-owned, you're in a hub zone, it's also the contracting officers are not required to set it aside and go through that process because it adds time and energy to go do that. So for small business set-asides, unfortunately for small businesses, that is suspended for now. However, if you have something that they need, they want to talk to you whether you're small or large. Non-essential items, by the way, essential items can be anything. The essential items can, I've seen range from gears that need to be machined for the warfighter, and all the way from the masks to the gowns to what's needed for the warfighter, as well as services. There's actually a lot of consultant services, et cetera, that are out there that are essential, and they need to have those contracts moving. So there's a ton of items that are in that essential category. For non-essential items, if you have a bid you've submitted or you're under a contract, so this is going to allow you to modify your delivery schedule, but there will be no financial relief at the moment for modifying that delivery schedule. And the key here is to document everything, not just internal document. If you are asked to not ship something, then document it, respond to that buyer with an email, and even if you haven't been asked, there could be a vendor that you have, a supplier, that could be an issue because of the COVID-19. Document that and let your buyer know that you have this issue and when you think you're going to get it resolved. So anything having to do with these delays, set up a code in your accounting system to collect those costs for the delays. It's important to do, not just from a contracting basis, but those costs will contribute to obviously a potential negative to your profit, and you want to make sure you capture those things in the event you would have to even use that in a tax return. So I encourage you to track everything, document it all the time. New procurements, you can assume that it's going to be for essential items. When you see new procurements going out, you probably won't find anything that is non-essential per se. The other impact, a lot of businesses have either applied for, and I guess they just ran out of funds for the payroll program, the PPP, and the EIDL program for other expenses for businesses. Hopefully Congress gets their act together and adds additional funding there. The thing here is to work with your Small Business Development Center, your Small Business Development SBDCs, and information on all of this is posted on our website. When you pull up our Norcal PTAC website, you'll see the COVID-19 page, and it covers those items as well. Just to note that PTAC works on with the procurement issues relative to COVID-19, but the SBDC is responsible for working those issues having to do with these loans. So moving on to the next topic, System for Award Management. This is the registration to do business with the federal government. And it's at BetaSam.gov. So with a change coming down, and by the way, some of these changes are going to be coming down soon or now. and some of them are projected to come down later, and I'll talk to each one. So they've announced they're going to go the Unique Entity Identifier, UEI. It's replacing the DUNS number. It's already starting to replace the DUNS numbers by December of 2020. So by the end of this year, all businesses wanting to do business with the federal government will have a UEI and not required to sign up for a DUNS number. It'll automatically be assigned when you register your business for new businesses registering in SAM. And you'll be automatically assigned, if you have a current registration in SAM, you'll automatically get assigned a number. DUNS numbers will be retained in the system for some period of time. And here's some instructions. So as this proceeds, as the UEI comes online, these are basic steps when you go in to update your SAM registration. So use login.gov to get to the entity update area. You'll see the registration details for your business. The suggestion here is you print out this information, because you're going to have to put it back in manually later in the process. And then you want to continue with that to update your entity, just like you would normally do, and on to the purpose of registration. And then you choose all these sections that are applicable for what you want to update. But here's where the change comes in. Then step 4, in the next screen, here's where you're going to see that is seen on the initial registration asking for the DUNS business name, physical address. If you have printed the information from item 2, this is going to be very handy, because then you can just re-enter it here. You want to make sure, we encourage you to do print out that section so that there's no hiccup if the information is different. And then after you do that, then you're going to see a similar screen that in the initial application screen, comparing what was entered in the D&B information. So this is an additional step as the UEI comes on. And again, if you are clients of PTAC and you need some help with this process, please let us know, and we'd be glad to help you out. The National Defense Authorization Act. Every year, there's the NDAA assigned. This is what funds the Department of Defense. And also included in here is any changes that affect small business. So this raises the threshold for the 8A program. For those of you who are not familiar with the 8A program, it's a program you can apply for. It's a 9-year program, and it's for small minority-owned businesses. And so this allows that a sole source award can go up to $100 million for a Department of Defense contract. So they don't have to compete it under the $100 million, moves the threshold up. It clarifies that large prime contractors may receive subcontracting credit on the individual subcontracting plans for small businesses at lower tiers. So this, although it isn't into law yet, it hasn't been enabled into the Federal Acquisition Regulation, so this will be coming down the pike this year and next. And so it's an opportunity as an 8A business, once you get your certification, to go after prime contractors as well as the direct to the federal government to sell into the Department of Defense, because those large prime contractors are getting more credit for working with 8A businesses. Excuse me. The next is to require the SBA to report federal spending on designated best-in-class vehicles. Those are best-class vehicles are things like IDIQ contracts, all the certified small business certifications, the 8A, which I talked about, the hub zone, veteran owned, business owned. And so there's a requirement that they have to report all of those through these vehicles for small businesses, and that will be coming up in the Federal Acquisition Regulation probably within about 6 months. They've also extended the Mentor Protege program. For those that you are not aware of it, the SBA has a Mentor Protege program. And so the mentor, typically a large business, the protege is a small business. And for specific opportunities or pieces that a small business would like to go after, they sign up with a mentor, and the mentor then can support the protege in getting into the federal contracting business. And what the mentor gets to do is bid as a small through that protege for specific items that that protege provides. So it's going to extend the Mentor Protege program to 2026. It's been going on for several years now, and so this is a good thing. Accelerates the payment date. So this is important for prime contractors that are a small business or that subcontract with small business concerns. So they'll actually accelerate the payments with a goal of 15 days for those prime contractors that do business with small business. So if you're a small business or you're working with a prime, there'll be an opportunity to get up your cash flow through that 15-day period of payment. The next piece was on the NDAA is the surviving spouse of a veteran. If you have a service-connected disability rated at less than 100%, who does not die as a result of a service-connected disability, you can maintain ownership status of that for 3 years. So the spouse can continue to get the benefit of a veteran-owned business for another 3 years after the death of the veteran. BetaSam. So I'd be curious to hear from people whether or not they've gone to BetaSam. I would encourage you to go to BetaSam. It has another login. It's login.gov. Same process as SAM to set up your login. I would encourage you to get familiar with it because everything is moving and has moved or is moving into that one site. Still called beta because they haven't completely released everything or got all of the functions in there. The current functions they have in there is FBO.gov, and that's where you search for federal business opportunities. It's the same as FedBizOps, but they've updated their search and display functions, which has caused some consternation because it is different than what they're normally used to doing in FedBizOps. So I encourage you to get familiar with it and how you search for opportunities and contract awards and things like that. There's no impact to our bid match service. The bid match service, which James mentioned earlier, our bid match service will go out to FBO.gov and do searches, and even though they moved it over to beta.sam, it still has the ability to go out and get those opportunities delivered to you. The next piece that they recently put in is the Federal Procurement Data System. And what that is it's the same information coming over. It's contract awards for 5 years, for the past 5 years, and so it continuously gets updated. It has a different look, again, different feel, different search parameters, but the information is there to look up the contract awards by agency, by vendor, etc. The Department of Labor wage determinations have been on beta.sam for well over a year. and it works the same way as when it was on a standalone basis. So that's where you go to determine minimum wage, benefits, etc., for your labor categories. SAM registrations, we just talked about SAM. That will transition this year. There's other functionalities, improvements on a TBD. We'll see how that goes. We encourage you to log in, set up a login, and become familiar with all the functions and how they work, because this is where it's going. At some point, they're going to pull the plug on these other systems, and so you need to become familiar with these functions. Moving to the next topic, cybersecurity. We get hit with coronaviruses and we get hit with security viruses. And the world certainly is a different place. So from a cybersecurity compliance, these are the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and the DFARS have to do with those regulations. We do have a cybersecurity webinar coming up. I encourage you to take that. And out of this compliance, there are minimum steps to safeguard to protect your contractor information systems. The clause, it will flow down to subcontractors. So it doesn't matter what you do, but eventually it's going to flow down if you're going to do business with the federal government. It applies to the contractor, your information systems that hold covered defense information. It's a national standard, 800-171, that defines what those security requirements are, and also there's incident reporting requirements. So if you think you've been hacked, you are required to report these incidents into their main system. In September, they released what's known as the CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and it's still a draft. It has a scale of 1 to 5 based on the work to be performed. Most small businesses would be in the lower side, in the 1 or 2 area, and because it's based on work you're performing. There will be third-party audits to confirm that you have met those levels, and they're still determining the accreditation body that will be assigned to assign auditors and certify your systems. The thing to do now is you develop that plan to meet your work performed. If you need more information, again, watch that webinar coming up. I have at the bottom of the page. I encourage you to look at that. And we also have an Excel spreadsheet we can send you that defines what's in each one of those levels. So in summer, fall this year, they're going to start incorporating these standards into solicitations and the CMMC standards. The Federal Acquisition Regulation on the previous page has been shown up in the solicitations themselves. There's a talking future again in the House of Representatives 5669, the Secure Small Business Act. There's to establish a program to assist small businesses concerned with purchasing cybersecurity products and services. So there is a movement in the House of Representatives. I encourage everyone to contact your House reps and I guess communicate that you're very interested in even participating yourself, if you will, making it known that this is very important in order to be able to comply to the CMMC. Otherwise, it could be pretty expensive for small businesses. And again, the PTAC webinar on cybersecurity, it's coming up on April 21st. I would encourage you to attend that to get more information. Defense Logistics Agency. It buys literally millions of items. This is kind of like the Department of Defense, Walmart, or warehouse of, they just literally buy millions of items to support the warfighter, and not just items, not just hard items, but soft items and services as well, whatever it takes to keep the warfighter ready for action. And recently, there's been a lot of talking about leading from cybersecurity. There's been a lot of scams where people would put in their false information into the system so that they could be able to automatically get information out of the system. There was even one case where there was like 30 cage codes which get issued from SAM when you register in SAM, and all 30 cage codes were bogus. They were not real companies. So there's a lot of that going on, and I just want to talk a couple minutes here of the process that you have to follow. I have several clients that have machine shops, and as an example, and important that you follow this process if you're going to submit bids to the Defense Logistics Agency. So you have to have, in order to get to the technical data, by the way, could be a drawing, okay, or definition of a program, definition of a technology. In order to get that data, you have to have an approved U.S.-Canada Joint Certification Program certification. It's on a particular form, the 2345 form. And there's an independent group as part of the DLA that reviews that particular information. You can't see the drawings on a lot of what they buy unless you have that JCP certification. You have to have an approved DIBS, DLA Internet Bid Board System. It's an automated system, so you have to have an account, and then you have to be enabled within the Technical Data Distribution System, which is called C folders account. So you need to have all of 3 items. You need to have the JCP certification, you have to have a legitimate account in Internet Bid Board System, and you have a C folders account. And by the way, the DIBS and the C folders account are 2 different logins, so that you have to maintain. So in order to go through this, you have to have a business need for that export control data. In other words, in order to do the quote, if you don't have a copy of the drawing of the part, you probably are not going to be able to submit a bid. It also can be for R&D as well, research and development projects that the DLA undertakes. You have to have an approved specific certification for the export control information. So as part of it, they have the, you have to complete the technical data training and return that export control compliance to the JCP office, that 2345 form. And that person that signs that form must be the same person, the person signing that certificate statement above has to be the same person that signs that certification. And indeed, the DLA on the cybersecurity side is requiring, when you submit a bid, on occasion they'll require a separate little certification that you have done everything you needed to do for the cybersecurity as well. So they up the game on controlling all this information. So you have to complete the technical data management questionnaire and send it to the Joint Certification Program Office, and for determining your physical and MAC address instructions. So identify your cage code on the email subject line every time. That way they can quickly go into the system and see what the status is, rather than chasing it around your email. So after that, JCP office reviews the documents along with your Form 2345, and they'll do an assessment to see if you are eligible to be a supplier that can have access to export control technical data. Any questions? I have the DLA custodian site here, or for any additional information you need for export control. So the All Small Business Act, this one's interesting because particularly in California, Colorado, et cetera, they finally recognize, and again, this is a House of Representatives rule that is going through the House, and it's just to ensure that certain loan programs from the SBA are made available to cannabis-related legitimate businesses. So for a long time, the SBA has not recognized the cannabis industry, and so this is going to be a big change. So if there's anybody online that's in the cannabis industry, you may want to contact your congressperson and suggest that they support this this House rule to get it into law. Hub zone. So hub zone, a hub is a historically underutilized business geographic area, and it's based on geographic area zones that they've determined that historically the federal government has not purchased enough products and services in certain areas. It's not economically driven per se, it's driven by census maps. So right now, they have a goal. Federal government is mandated by law to buy 23% of everything it buys from small businesses. Part of that 23% is 3% is the goal for hub zone businesses. This is the one they have never ever met. It's less than 2%. I think it's like 1.7 or something at the moment for the past year. So there's a lot of interest in hub zone. There's a hub zone map, that you can quickly see if you meet the requirement. Your business has to be in a hub zone, and at least 35% of the employees have to reside in the hub zone. It doesn't have to be the same one. But the update here is the hub zone maps are currently frozen through 2021 next year. But it will be updated every 5 years now. And the annual recertification it'll be effective for all sub-zone contracts for the 1-year period. So annual recertification will go from 3-year to a 1-year annual certification. Requires hub zone status and dynamic small business search at time of offer. So it has to be all set up in SAM and show up in the dynamic small business search at the time of when the bid is submitted. You can't wait until the time of award to have your hub zone certification. The principal office, like I said, it has to be in a hub zone. So if you purchase a building or you enter into a 10-year plus lease in a hub zone, your office will be determined to be in a hub zone for 10 years automatically. In addition, and again, it must reside in the hub zone, of course. And for an individual, an employee, or yourself to be counted as part of that 35%, you must live at a location for at least 180 days. and they're going to grandfather that status of 180 days. So if an employee you live in that hub zone at the time of certification, that employee will continue to be treated as if she lived in the hub zone for the entirety of her employment, even if she moves out of the hub zone. Remember the 100-day requirement of having to have lived there. So annual recertification. So once certified, you're eligible for all the awards throughout that particular year. Again, if you are a small business. And a note here from a COVID-19 perspective, the residency requirement is currently waived because a lot of people are teleworking, working from home, etc. And so that residency requirement is currently waived until July. And then for continued and uninterrupted employment, anybody that's put in temporary not paying status will still count towards your 35% eligibility. I hope you can't hear that. So from Hub Zone, let's move into the women-owned small business. There is some good stuff here. It has been sore spot with me for sure that we kept as a process that was established several years ago. I think it was in 2011 that it was okay to charge small business, women-owned businesses to be certified, where we never did charge Hub Zone or veteran-owned for those certifications. So some good changes here. So this summer, the changes for the process, you're no longer going to be able to self-certify, which actually is a good thing. You may either apply through the small SBA's pre-online certification, so the SBA do your certification, or you can go through a third party at a cost, which usually runs about $350 a year, which has been in place for quite a few years. So now this is good because the SBA is now taking on that certification of that the women-owned businesses. If you are not certified in women-owned small business contract program, you continue to identify yourself as a women-owned small business in SAM. You receive contract awards outside the program, and these awards are counted toward an agency's goal for awards to a women-owned small business. So you don't have to be certified to be counted by that agency that they are met their goals for a women-owned small business. The important thing here is to know is that if you're not certified, you get counted, okay? If you get certified, which I encourage women-owned businesses to do, you can be set aside for just a certified women-owned small business, and so it reduces the level of competition. And in some cases, based on what you do, what your unique product or service you have, it can be a sole source award, so they don't even have to compete you. So I would still encourage you to do the women-owned small business certification, which is coming this summer, and you would supply the same kind of documents you would if you had self-certified, and it would be reviewed by the SBA at no cost to the women-owned business. So moving from women-owned businesses to veteran-owned businesses, they've made some changes here as well. So up to this point, the veteran-owned business or service-disabled veteran-owned business, up to this point, the certification which is performed by the Veterans Administration under a contract with a private company. It was only the veteran businesses, the Veterans Administration, what they buy, and the FAA were the only two agencies that required that veteran to be certified in that program. All other agencies, it was a check the box that you were a veteran or a service-disabled veteran in SAM. So this is changing. So you'd allow then the SBA to take over that responsibility downstream to now make it a one-stop shop and get all certified under one set of rules. So this common definition, there is was a requirement that service-disabled vet had to make all the decisions. This rule eases that requirement somewhat. So that service-disabled vet could be a veteran-owned business, but you hire a CEO to run your business. Well, you don't make all the decisions, but you sure own it, and you are a vice president or something of that nature. And there'll be a definition of what those circumstances are, which allows that other non-service-disabled veterans can have shared decision-making authority. Control can shift. So a veteran is called to active duty. It's still a veteran-owned business. It still is under the same rules. The control just shifts probably to a civilian to during all that veteran is on active duty. So it allows that to happen. If the service-disabled veteran is rated at 100%, this is an important one, a surviving spouse can own and control for up to 10 years after veterans is deceased. So it can go on as a veteran-owned business for 10 years if that service-disabled veteran was rated at 100%. This is where the VA, SBA Act, again, this is, again, going through the House. I would encourage you, particularly veterans, to encourage this to occur. I think it will as they move all certifications, like the women we talked about, and now this is the veteran, to move to under the SBA umbrella for all the certifications. So it transfer those certifications to the SBA, and it will require certification government-wide. So you just can't check the box anymore. You have to go through a certification. There'll be a transfer date of 2 years after this is enacted, 6-month extension. And the SBA would take on the veteran-owned small business let's see if I can back this up. And the SBA would take on that certification on a reimbursable basis from the VA. So the VA would still have the funds to get these veterans certified, and as the SBA certify those veterans, then there would be funds sent over from the VA. Current SBA self-certified firms would retain self-certification for, I think it's a year. For 1 year. So if you just check the box in SAM that you're a service-disabled veteran firm, you retain that self-certification for 1 year, and then you would have to go through the certification process with the SBA to remain in that category for small business. So that is what I had intended to cover today. These are the updates to the federal government, and I'll turn it back to James if you wanted to take on the next events.
Sure. Lenny, it looks like you just unshared your screen though. Will you go ahead and re-share that? Yeah. There we go.
Okay.
All right. And I no longer have remote access, so if you go to the next slide. All right, so as I mentioned before, we hold regular online workshops, webinars like these. All of the upcoming ones are webinars for obvious reasons. So I'll just go through them real quick. They're also located on our website at norcalptac.org/calendar. Next one is the COVID-19 contracting Q&A. That one is coming up on Tuesday, April 21st. All of these are at 10 a.m. And we have, as we mentioned a couple times, the cybersecurity regulations one. That's constantly changing, as Lenny mentioned. That's the following day on Wednesday, April 22nd. And we have a general one, how to set yourself up for federal marketplace success on May 7th. And then one that focuses specifically on hub zone federal contracts. That's on May 20th. So again, go to our website, check it out. There's lots of other resources on our website, not just these. You can also find past webinars and resources, which is where these slides from today will also be posted. So I think we have time for the Q&A now. We might go a little bit over, but let's go through. Lenny, can you read them off from the chat, or do you want them to do you want me to read them to you?
Yeah, I want you to read them to me. Let me see if I can get to the chat.
Sure. All right, let me go through here. So Robert is asking, how do we tap into those micro purchase opportunities?
Okay, so you can actually search in the FedBizOps section that's in beta.sam, and you can actually, there's a search that you can do for just micro purchases. And you search for the micro purchase and put in maybe a keyword or the NAICS code for your product or services, and a list of opportunities would come out. And one of the things I would suggest you do too when you do this is to take a look at which agencies are using it for what you do, and even if it's a past procurement or a contract award already, to reach out to those buyers to let them know that you provide those goods or services.
All right, thanks, Lenny. Noah Lee asks, if I work out of my home but use a UPS mailbox, business mailbox, or virtual business network that is located within a hub zone, can I still get the certification? I already know the answer to that one. Since the UPS mailbox or virtual business address will act as my business address. So
the bottom line is the physical location of the business is the hub zone place. It's not a post office box. It physically has to be physically located in a hub zone. If the post office box is, a post office box cannot be used as the hub zone address, bottom line.
That's pretty clear. All right. Destiny is asking, are you able to change your WOSB to a EDWOSB if you qualify?
Absolutely. No question there. You can easily do that. And once you've applied for the EDWOSB, then you would also then be, you're open for the WOSB as well, as long as your NAICS codes, because ED and WOSB each have a set of NAICS codes. As long as your NAICS codes are covered in those areas, you can have both designations.
All right, and maybe we can just back up for a second. The following question it asks, what is the difference between WOSB and EDWOSB? What's the advantage of getting the EDWOSB?
Okay, so the EDWOSB is for certain NAICS codes, and those for economic disadvantage women-owned small businesses. So economic disadvantage is essentially your net worth is less than $750,000 is economic disadvantage, and your business is in one of those NAICS codes. There's specific NAICS codes for EDWOSB. and that can easily be found on the SBA website what those listed NAICS codes are.
All right, thank you. We have a couple more questions. Robert asks, I realize that our business is in a hub zone, but we're not registered as a hub zone business, but as an 8A. How can we add hub zone into our certification?
Okay, so you would go through the hub zone application process, because you can be veteran-owned, women-owned, hub zone, and 8A. So you can have all four if you qualify for all four. But you can apply for the hub zone status and provide the documentation as part of the certification process and become hub zone certified. And remember that it's just not the business that has to be in the hub zone. A minimum of 35% of the employees have to reside in the hub zone. Doesn't have to be the same hub zone.
Great, and also remember that we have an entire webinar workshop around the hub zone on May 20th. So do check in back in a month or so to get in-depth guidance on how to go through that process. Ralph James is asking, when are the changes for the veteran-owned business going to be in effect?
I believe, let me look at my notes here, see if I had that. So that veteran-owned business, right now, it's in the House of Representatives, and they did pass the SBA Act, and it takes a while for it to come into the federal acquisition regulation, but I would check with the SBA of when they are going to take over those certifications. I would contact the office closest to you and ask that question, and they would be in a better position than I am to tell you when they're going to actually take it over.
All right.
Or I'd be happy to chase that. Or I'd be happy to chase that down for you.
Yeah, if anyone has any follow-up questions, go ahead and email the contact information provided, and I can route them to Lenny, or see if I can handle them myself. Destiny has another question here. For 8A, what does it mean operating firm must not be a broker? What type of broker does this mean?
You can't be a middleman, if you will, or a middlewoman in this case. A broker typically handles multiple businesses. You could think of like a real estate broker as an example, holding multiple, they have these multiple locations and sales, etc., but they don't own an individual one. So essentially you have to, if there's a woman-owned or an 8A woman-owned or veteran-owned, you have to own it and control it and manage it on a full-time basis. And if you can't meet all those three criteria, which a broker cannot, then it's not qualified.
All right, thanks, Lenny. All right, we have a last question here. We're gonna have to cut it off. Ralph James has another question. He asks, how do the new changes impact a business owner who is in the process of becoming a service-disabled veteran-owned small business program?
That's an excellent question. As these things move forward, yeah, it'd be good to find out if the SBA is going to do these certifications. What I would definitely do, though, if you were just now getting into the game as a veteran-owned business, is when you register in SAM, make sure you check that box that you are a veteran-owned business or service-disabled when you register to do business with the federal government to get that started. And then, depending on when the SBA is going to say they're going to take over the certification, you could apply for the veteran certification through the VA. And those would be the steps to take to get that going. I think the process is going to be very similar to what the VA does now as far as the SBA taking it over, but there are always nuances when they do that. Same basic processes of, ownership, management, and control.
All right. Well, thanks. Thank you for joining, everyone. We're going to have to cut things off now. Would like to also thank Lenny for giving a great presentation and handling these questions. Like I said, if you have any other questions, you can email me at info@norcalptacs.org, and I'll see if I can route them to Lenny. I also want to let you know that you should either receive an email from us shortly, or you should have just received it. This will have a link to a survey that we really, really appreciate you fill out. It's so important to us and to our funder to let us know how you felt about this webinar so we can keep improving our services. And as promised, there'll also be a recording, video recording, and the PDF of the slides posted today. This email will give you a link where you'll be able to find these resources. I'll get them up this afternoon if I can. Once again, thanks for joining our federal government procurement updates for 2020 webinar, and have a great day, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, and be safe.